Hey everybody, welcome to We've Got Ward, a Doof Media podcast series where we expertly dissect and discuss Ward while those return to the world of parahumans. My name is Matt Freeman, and there's a 65% chance that this is my co-host, Scott Daly.
And there's a 3% chance that this episode will be short. You gotta wonder though, Matt, what's that other 35%? Who could I be?
That is for the audience to find out.
This is the weekly podcast where Matt and I eagerly dive into Wildbow's world of telling you the odds, unmitigated emotional brutality, and alien-based death powers as we analyze and interpret this ongoing web serial. This week, Victoria and company continue to listen as Dinah explains just how fucked they all are. But hey, Damsel is doing some petty crime, and it's a great opportunity to go say hi to their favorite twin. Until New Cape Mockument drives Victoria to a very dark place where she puts Waste in the driver's seat. Or at least, it's like one of those driver's ed cars where they both have a steering wheel. It's crazy. Matt, what did you think of these two chapters?
Well, these were awesome. It was great to check in with Dinah after so long and get sort of some context for what's been going on in the background of the story up to this point, and also, you know, to kind of recast some suspicion on Contessa, of course. Mm-hmm. And then we move on into this very interesting fight where, yet again, Wildbow has found a way to make something, to put a new twist into the combat so that it remains interesting and fresh. In this case, it's the heroes can't use certain aspects of their powers, and that makes it cool. And then, of course, there's the whole Waste thing that we'll talk about at length.
The literal game-changing thing.
Yeah.
That is game-changing to us, the reader, but oddly enough, our protagonist just seems pretty cool with it.
Yeah.
So, we'll talk all about that when we get to it. Let's just go ahead and do it. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So quick announcements first. This Friday, we are doing our monthly book club on Friday night. The book we're covering is The Well of Ascension, which is the second of Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn novels. Mm-hmm. So if you like that book, if you've read that book, come join us. It's a live book club. It's a live YouTube stream, and we will, it's interactive. So that's fun. So yeah.
And the last time we did a Mistborn book, everything broke on the live stream, and it was terrible. So hopefully this is our chance to make up for that.
We'll see. Sure, it'll be fine. All right, let's move on into the chapter.
All right.
So 16.3 begins with Miss Militia continuing to interview Dinah and Nieves. Dinah elaborates on what some of her manipulations have been throughout the story.
And I like how this basically confirms Gary's worst fears, right? Like this whole time he's been, and she downplays the amount of manipulation, but at the end of the day, she was kind of pushing him towards this. So he's been controlled by a cape the whole time, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to be going over everything that's happened to him in this story.
Yeah.
Was that a terrorist attack on the settlement part of her plan to push him, to galvanize him into being in this position? Mm-hmm. It's got to be a real mind job for just a normal person who doesn't have to deal with this kind of thing all the time, like our other characters do.
Yeah, and I mean, he was always a guy that was so worried about the power that capes have and the power to control the regular populace that they would have. And Dinah's here like, yeah, I did that. It's for your own good.
Yeah,
I'm doing it for the good of all of us. But
right.
But yeah, I kind of did do that.
I like how Victoria describes him as looking not happy about it, but also not mad at her. Like he's just resigned. He's okay, well, oh, man. Figures.
There's a lot of people in these two chapters that are just kind of resigned to what's happening.
Yeah, that's true. It's a really bad spot.
Mm-hmm.
So meanwhile, Golem joins Breakthrough watching the video feeds and fills them in on basically just some other commentary about what's been happening. For one thing, it's clarified that causing Citrine and Hashtag Man to rush to their exit was what killed Kurt. So the Harbinger wasn't actually in on it. They were just a tool.
When you wrote Hashtag Man in the script, I thought you were just like being quick and writing Number Man. And then you actually just said Hashtag Man.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's way better this way.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think what this part is doing, is, if we recall at the end of Arc 15, there was some confusion and some theories out there about what actually happened here with Citrine and Number Man, right? Because there was some incongruous information where they said they were going to be part of the raid, but then they were in the office, so people were thinking something might be going on here. And at the end of the day, nothing was going on here, right? It was just exactly as it was laid out to us. So I think what Wildbow is doing here is kind of having a moment where all that is clarified, right? Like they left as soon as they got the report, trusting Contessa. The anti-parahuman faction had prepared a bomb. Kid Cassandra alleges that they wouldn't have missed the bomb if they hadn't received the message. By that logic, sending them the instructions killed them as surely as if she pulled the trigger of a gun. Do I have that right? And someone nods and says yes, and then we're like, okay, we get it. And I can't remember if we've talked about this before, but this strikes me as the type of thing that is unique, like extremely unique to this kind of storytelling. Because I think all writers have moments in their books where they were trying to convey something, thought they had conveyed something, and then some people read it and they take away a different meaning. They get confused, and sometimes you want that to happen, right? But sometimes you're just trying to have facts come across and wires get crossed. And I mean, that's what the editing process does, right? Like, you have people edit not just for errors, for content and for understanding. And someone doesn't get this, and you're okay, I need to go back and fix it. This book doesn't have that because of the manner of which it's being published. And so, like we've said before, everyone reading it is kind of like those test readers, right? And so what Wildbow does is, I think he sees and this is all speculation, I don't actually know whether this is true, but what he sees a moment like this where maybe what was happening got a little confused. It didn't come across as clearly as he wanted it to. So he goes back in a later chapter and just has a character clarify this for us, just state it. And I mean, that's something you only really do in this type of storytelling, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking about your analysis here, and I'm just for the sake of playing very mild devil's advocate, I'm thinking like, maybe it's the case that anytime you give the reader information that is important at the time, but it has to be delivered in a quick way because you're in a very tense scene, then in order to make sure that information actually lands in the proper way, you might have to come back to it later.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
But I do think that what you're talking about does happen where, I mean, I'm out of the two of us, I'm definitely the one who will often be like, well, that character said this, but we should always assume that this is an elaborate game of chess that Wildbow is playing against the reader, and it's like, and you're usually like, let's just assume that it's true until we're told it's not true, and usually that's correct. I mean, Wildbow's actually almost never just like misleading us. And
the book very rarely outright lies to you. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that is interesting. I mean, I see that as one of the strengths of serials is that the author can kind of tack with the wind and make modifications on the fly because I mean, like you said, I think it's kind of, I think the whole medium of serials is pretty awesome because the ability to have thousands and thousands of test readers allows the author to really tap into what people are feeling, in a way that just like sitting there writing a novel by yourself doesn't.
Yeah, I agree. I guess the thought I want to bring up here, let's assume that the goal of the text, again, we don't know this 100%, but let's just assume, let's get into the head of the writer and assume that the goal of the text at the time the Number Man assassination attempt happened was that information was conveyed in its entirety, and was meant to be taken as truthful, as 100% truthful, right? And then that didn't happen quite that way, so an edit had to be made after or not an edit, but a passage had to be made after the fact to clarify. Let's assume that is 100% the case. We don't know for sure, but let's assume it. Mm-hmm. If I'm then taking this book and editing it for a future published version or whatever. Do I change that? Do I go in and take out the clarification and then just rewrite the part to make it clearer? Or do I leave it the way it is? And I don't know if there's a right answer to that question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like in some cases maybe you would want the reader to be confused and uncertain until later.
Sure.
In this particular case, I don't see any dramatic benefit to it being confusing. Like the dramatic impact of like, oh man, a car bomb just blew up Citrine and Numberman. Like that hits you harder if you just believe that it's true in that moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but that's again, it seems like there's a lot of variables involved, obviously.
I mean, I do think it's funny just to think about this, scope of an entire book, right? There are probably many, many times in which this happens. There's stuff that people don't even talk about that I wanted to convey this. No one mentioned it in any of the comments, any of the conversation about this book. No one mentioned this one thing. So I have to go in later and hit that beat again and hope people notice it this time. So there's, I think, hundreds of those kind of little events, peppered through the book, and editing is part of making a decision. Okay, what do I do with those? How what is the right way to do? And that's why, like, I think of a project of editing a book like this and how long it's going to take to really get the edit down. And I'm like, not envious of Wildbow for the task, because it's a lot of decision making. It's a lot of tough choices. It's a lot of just work. Dang. And this moment here just made me like go down that rabbit hole and think about all these different things.
It is an interesting thing to think about. I mean, I personally think of, Worm and Ward as they exist in web serial form as a thing. And then if Wildbow ever does come out with giant, entire bookshelf thick novel versions of them, that's going to be basically that's going to be a different thing in my mind anyway.
Oh, yeah.
That's just, it is an interesting medium, and we haven't talked about the medium in a while. So
I think one of the reasons why that popped up is because I saw another subreddit thread that was like, what's the status on the worm edit? It's like, and my first thought was like, you don't understand how much work it's going to be.
Yeah.
So that was just a cool discussion of the medium. Anyway, we can go on now. Sorry.
Okay.
This is why the episodes are 3 hours long.
Yep. So I like how the interview is conducted with Miss Militia, almost perfectly avoiding phrasing anything as a question. Like, instead of saying, can you ask more questions than you used to? It's understood. I understand you can ask more questions than you used to, and then letting her reply. And I mean, it's fun because the book doesn't remind us why that is. We're just trusted to remember, like, if you ask Diana a question, there's a pretty good chance her power is going to interpret it as a power question, and you use up one of her slots for the day. Yeah,
I mean, she does specifically ask for that, though, in the section. She says to Miss Militia, please don't ask me questions.
Sure.
It's like that. Anytime I see something like this, because I've read 4 whole arcs of Pact and I'm clearly an expert of it now, it makes me think about like the Pactian attention to detail and dialogue that book, just by its very nature, brings, right? And so I think this is just great, and I really like that. And I think it's also funny to see that Nieves, not so much, right? He's like, we see throughout this section, he's asking questions. Didn't you? Why not? Like, he's just constantly peppering her with questions, and you got to feel pretty awful for her.
Yeah. Miss Militia does slip up at least once, but she does a pretty good job, though.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, it is really funny because it's like, it's just kind of cheating.
Yeah. So we get a bunch of things clarified for us, like we said. She says the reason she focused on the anti-parahuman faction was that nobody else was paying enough attention to them, and they weren't rife with weird powers-related blind spots like Mama Mathers. Also, she admits that she couldn't see past the portal disaster prior to that point in the story, but she tried to make sure everyone was in decent shape beforehand. So that's interesting. Like, I think that'll be interesting information on a reread in particular as you're going through. You're like, okay, everything before the portal disaster, Dinah's hand is in that, but she doesn't know what's going to happen after it. So it's almost like a separate epoch of the story from her point of view.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think we mentioned this already, but it helps explain the whole, why is this pot not boiled over? This pot that we've been letting simmer since arc 1 of the story. And I know it's been like 2 months like book time, but it feels like it's been a long time. So I'm just like, when is this going to boil over? When it's going to happen? And the book is here telling us like, this is why it didn't, because Dinah was doing work. This is why it didn't happen. Everything that you've been dealing with, she's been involved in some way. And she's painting this picture of like, she's working behind the scenes the whole time. Which, I mean, again, I like this, and I think it's noble of her to try to do this. Why do these people have to be so damn secret with it all the time, though? Like, all these people are like, I'm working to the benefit of humanity, but I cannot tell you anything about what I am doing until after it's ruined.
Well, I'm sure it would change the numbers. I mean,
yeah,
the actual reason is it would mess up the plan. And if she tells the wardens about it, they're going to be like, oh, we're not comfortable with that. But
well, maybe you shouldn't do it then. Maybe, just maybe.
Yeah. It is like, it's fun. It's fun that we have this element. We've been talking through almost the whole story about Dinah, because we knew from very early on, like, oh, Dinah's talking to the anti-parahumans. What could she be doing? What could she be doing in the background? And like the Chekhov's gun going off is her being like, yeah, everything that I was planning is ruined.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I didn't tell you about it, but you ruined it.
Yeah. So, but it's a fun little subversion of our expectations, because we were definitely expecting like, oh yeah, Dinah's going to come out. It's all going to be part of a Dinah plan. That's kind of true. Like everything was kind of part of a Dinah plan, but now the plan is ruined. So that's a neat twist. Yeah.
And so here's one thing I want to discuss with you about this, though. Like Dinah says she got involved with the anti-parahuman stuff specifically because it was a thing that no one else was really paying attention to, and it was something that had no blind spots around it. So out of everything she could do the most with this, right? But she also kind of supports it a little bit, right? Because in this conversation with Miss Melissa, she says something that we've heard Rain say in relation to a Gary Nieves argument, which is, we're scary as hell. And she basically Tony Starks it and says, we need to be put in check. So like, as much as she is not like doesn't hate parahumans and isn't like she definitely supports the movement in some of their like core ideologies, I think. So I don't think it's just the fact that she could help in this area the most.
Yeah, I don't think I would have thought about the connection unless Miss Militia herself pointed the connection out to me. But the fact that Dinah is this person who was kidnapped and abused by capes.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that she is a cape is almost secondary. Like her whole worldview is like, yeah, I got sucked into this horrible cape world of violence and being kidnapped and then almost being kidnapped again. Wasn't the main motivating factor of what she did after that moment was to not make sure that never happens again? She never gets in a situation where that happens again? I thought it was. I mean, it makes sense. Like she talks about, she goes to visit the wardens and she tells them, I hired mercenaries to break me out. Like that's a pretty, like, it's not an insane step to take, but it's a pretty serious thing to do, right? Yeah, like to be like, I'm gonna go visit. When you go visit the police station to be questioned as a witness, but not as a suspect, you don't tell the cops that you have mercenaries hired to break you out if they arrest you. Let me put it that way.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, I think she's a really fascinating character, and I like that she's complex.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I like that her basis for being more on the anti-parahuman side is deeply baked into her character from the get.
Yeah, and it makes sense that she echoes something that Rain would say, because he went through a very similar thing, right? It was capes that really fucked his life up too. So I like that within this anti-parahumans movement, you have the outliers that truly just hate these people and are never going to understand, but you have a lot of complicated emotions going on here.
Yeah, I mean, and that's interesting because Dinah, while her power is strong, she probably feels very weak because she was held captive for so long. Rain is similar, where he started out very weak, and remember when his power was just like it was kind of the butt of a joke. It was just his power sucks, and it's sort of gotten better just because he's gotten better at using it. But yeah. So anyway, moving on, Dinah describes having looked for a specific future using that aspect of her power that leaves her laid out for days. And she found a desirable future where Nieves has instituted a citywide strike. There's a propaganda video that has made the rounds, convincing people to spread out. The villains are defeated. and the middle of the city is destroyed by a big disaster. But overall, the deaths are minimized because of the various plans she put into effect. But of course, Contessa has derailed this future.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that basically in this is Dinah's ideal outcome, right? And even in this ideal outcome, whatever is going to break the ice still happens. It's just not quite as bad. So like this is almost inevitable at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting. It makes you wonder, like, okay, so basically her whole plan is aimed at getting people to evacuate and spread out.
Yeah.
And if you step back from it, she can't just run out there and say like, "Oh my God, everyone evacuate and spread out." Like that would probably be much worse than this somewhat more complicated and subtle way of doing it, where a bunch of dominoes are set up and the end result is that people vacate the middle of the city.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of what I want to talk to you about, because I really latched onto this idea, especially this idea of this propaganda video that we see here. Is it's a man and a woman talking about how they wish they'd struck out on their own and discussed self-sufficiency. And a lot of this book, since the beginning of this book, we've been talking about themes around the idea of community, the idea of cooperation. We had the therapy team coming together to help each other, to lean on each other. The team ups between the heroes. It's really been Victoria's modus operandi to bring the heroes together and to work together in a way that they never have before. And now here we have Dinah telling us that in the future, the best outcome she saw is the one in which people realized that individualism was better, self-sufficiency was better, they're better off alone. And so they separate and go their own way, right? Yeah,
I mean, I agree with all that.
And so it's really the first time that it really connected with me, that this idea of community cooperation, of people being together, is kind of like why there's a problem in the first place, right, in this arc of the story.
Yeah.
There's too many capes in the same place, and the ice has been picked at too many times that shit's just going to get fucked up. And I mean, this is really interesting because I don't think the message of the book is actually going to shift to this, to line up with that propaganda video and say, actually, self-sufficiency and individualism, you don't need other people. I don't think that's where the book is going. But I do think it's really interesting because on a high, large level, we're seeing one of the core themes of the story being challenged and brought forth in conflict, right? This idea of community, cooperation. These are the keys to survival after a terrible event, after a terrible traumatic event. And now we're having the plot of the book attack that central idea and say, well, is it? Well, is it? And I'm really excited to watch where this goes.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we had Chicken Little recapitulate the theme of the previous book of getting everyone working together, when we have Victoria repeatedly trying to set up organizations and modes of communication, modes of cooperation. And so, yeah, to say that this is sort of the antithesis that's being introduced, like Dinah's whole plan, in a word, is separation. It's the opposite of community. It's
cut ties. Would you say?
Oh my God. Okay, 3 points to Scott. But yeah, like the idea that like basically Dinah's saying we can't solve our problems. We can't solve our problems together. The only solution is to spread out and just not be around each other. Mm-hmm. And that's fantastic on the level of like themes clashing, right? I love it.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see where this is going. I love it. I love it so much. The other thing I want to talk to you about in this section is, what do you think about what Dinah's saying about Contessa, right? Because what she's basically saying is here, I was doing all this stuff, and I was doing it for the good of everything, and Contessa intentionally fucked me up. She intentionally is manipulating everything behind the scenes. She's pushing everything to where she wants it. Even the moments where you thought she was being better and you thought she was starting to maybe shift in her belief system, that's all manipulation anyway. She intentionally set out to make it so Number Dad died. And did Dinah's speech there change your opinion of Contessa at all?
Well, it probably did until we got down to Sveta's speech later, honestly, because I think Sveta is much more accurate. And when you sit back and you think about the way these powers work, I think like if Contessa wants some outcome and that outcome happens to not be in the probabilistic slice of futures that Dinah wants, then Dinah's going to perceive what happens as this terrible, disruptive series of events that messes her up, when actually Contessa was just getting the future that she wanted. It had nothing to do with what Dinah was doing.
I think Sveta decides it as like just a side effect.
Yeah.
Like that messing up her plan was just a side effect of my plan working correctly. And I do agree that what we know of the text basically corroborates that, because what Contessa did in having the explosion go off was distract teacher. We saw that. I mean, we saw teacher in that moment say, oh, well, shit, now my stuff's ruined. She messed me up. And that distracts him. And that's one of the reasons things end the way they are. So, yeah, I mean, I think what we have here is two precogs working towards their ideal future, and they don't line up with each other, and they're not like exchanging notes. So they're just going to like ping off each other in annoying ways. Yeah.
One thing that just occurred to me is like Contessa was okay. Assuming that appearances can be taken at face value, which is a big assumption. she was working like fast, right? She's moment to moment asking her power questions and then acting on the results. She's not in the mode of like setting up long, elaborate chains of paths to victory that culminate in an awesome victory. So the point is, it's possible that she literally didn't even know that order would result in Numberman dying. She just knew that her power told her to tell Harbinger to go deliver that message, and that would get the outcome she wanted, right?
Yeah, that's possible. I mean, I will never call myself an expert at Path to Victory, so I can't like say definitively, yes, you are correct in that, but I think that makes sense to me. I mean, I think Sveta argues that same point, right? And Sveta is the most charitable to Contessa she's ever been in this chapter. I mean, she's still pretty nasty to her, but I think she gives her the benefit of the doubt in some of the stuff, that like she was working fast. Stuff is caused like you're absolutely right that she's like, Dinah is absolutely convinced of the maliciousness of Contessa here, where Sveta is kind of like, I don't think she was meaning to be malicious about it. I think that's just kind of what happens when she does her thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's funny because I mean, Sveta obviously doesn't like her, but she's not being completely unfair.
Yeah, which is shocking. Good for you, Sveta.
Yeah.
The one thing that I think is absolutely true here is that Dinah is painting herself as this perfect angel, right? I made no mistakes. I was careful. Everything would have worked out perfectly if not for stupid Contessa getting in the way. And whenever someone starts behaving like that and dealing in absolutes like that, like I made no mistakes, like my BS meter like starts going up. Mm-hmm. And I just like, I think I legitimately believe Dinah is trying her best here, but I really liked Miss Melissa's response to her. This moment of, I run the risk of sounding overly aggressive by bringing this up, but someone could charge you with playing with fire with a very incendiary group and put yourself in a position where this sort of chain events or disaster on the scale was possible. And I think that's true, kind of, right? I mean, she was like playing with these very volatile group of people and trying to manipulate it and control it. And I fully agree. She probably had the best intentions in mind, but now it's bad.
Yep. And isn't she like 14 or 16 or
sure, yeah.
Maybe younger than 16? So it's entirely possible that she was just overconfident. And as incredible as her power is, I mean, we kind of have this thing within the story of like characters like her and like Tattletale who their power is incredible and they're not quite as smart as their power. Mm-hmm. You could even argue that's why their power chose them, is that it can kind of get them to do what it wants.
Right. I mean, shit, we've seen that same thing with Contessa, right? And her is like arguably the most power.
Yeah.
So I mean, like to just stand here and proudly declare, I made no mistakes. None of this is on me. I immediately go, come on, Dinah. Like,
yeah,
come on.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Just so we are clear on the stakes, though, Dinah relays the numbers to us, and they're super bad. 80.3615% chance of mass death that extends across reality. That remaining 19%, 15% of it is worse, where we don't even get to die. The other 4% isn't pretty either. So it's a really great way of just letting us know, oh boy.
Yep. Now, Now, and maybe you don't. Maybe this isn't made entirely explicit within the chapter, but that's the numbers now, right?
Yes.
That's not. So before that, the numbers before Contessa did her thing, the numbers were better, and Dinah felt like she had things going in a good direction. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, I wonder how bad it, like, we don't get to see the details of how bad it would have been.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that makes sense. So basically, yeah, they're watching this video that's like a bit delayed, and Kenzie loses patience and watches the whole video by splitting it into 8 sections and then watching each of them simultaneously on 8 screens inside her eyeballs, possibly overheating her brain. And then she finishes the video before everyone else, and then she picks out the part where Dinah demands that they send someone to deal with Deathchester, which is the villain group robbing a caravan of evacuees. I immediately recognized that name. Did you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I did.
See, it's
it's a very memorable name.
It is. So she reasons that Dinah's projections must include breakthrough, watching this and reacting in a predictable way, which of course is the definition of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It certainly is, isn't it? Like the brain heating though. Right?
There's so much going on in this chapter that I don't even have like a spare bandwidth for worrying about Kenzie, but yes, she's apparently just been doing all kinds of things to her eyes lately.
Yeah, she's got so, like, they ask her how much tech she's got shoved up in there, and she's like, a lot, but not too much. And like, I like Theo here. His role here is like the outsider who is not used to Kenzie. So like, we always get, like, I think Wildboy does this a lot, is he brings in an outside person when Kenzie's like going particularly tinker nutness, and like has them comment on it, so to remind us like of how not normal this is and crazy this is, because like you kind of like all our characters and us as well kind of get into just like, we're used to this, right? This is Kenzie, this is what Kenzie does, this is Kenzie, and we need to be reminded, no wait, this is so scary. And Theo is like, I am so worried about all this. And then like Kenzie just like casually like pulls up the camera footage feed of where Deathchester is, and he's just like, what? What? And it's like, he serves a perfect role here. I love it.
Yeah, I think one of the things he was worried about was just the fact that she's clearly just casually hacked into their closed circuit TV system in order to do this in the first place.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it's valuable, right? Because Golem presumably spends a lot of time around Tinkers, so having him act uncomfortable around Kenzie kind of underlines like, oh, this is a bit much even for a Tinker.
Yep. So Matt, we're bringing Damsel back into the story.
Yeah,
and I expected this to happen. I didn't think it was going to happen this quick though. But it works really well. I really like where this is going, and I can't wait to really dive into Damsel's state of mind in these chapters.
Yeah, I feel like it happening quickly is sort of motivated by, at least partially, by the fact that Kenzie and Victoria, for that matter, want to see her.
Yeah.
And Victoria doesn't think about it in those terms, but I feel like I know her well enough to know that that's part of the motivation for doing this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she would never say it out loud. I mean, Kenzie, it's textual because she's like bubbling and hopping up and down in excitement, and trading in every favor she has. And it makes me so sad. But yeah, I think Victoria's right there too. She wants to see her as well.
Yeah. And Victoria's chronically bad at pushing back against Kenzie too. But yeah, I like this bit where Victoria thinks she's being like her mom by chiding Kenzie for not using code names, and then she promptly apologizes for it. Just thought that was an interesting moment. Yeah,
I think it's we're starting to really like focus on the level of agitation Victoria has whenever she starts admitting that she's acting like her mom. You know she's in a bad place. But I think it's funny that she calls out Kenzie, and like the line before she called her Kenzie. And I know Lookout guards her secret identity like much less than Tristan does. Like, I think out of everyone on this team, Capricorn is probably the most secret with their secret identity. But I just think that's funny.
Yeah. Overall, the bit serves to just show how kind of out of sorts she is.
Yeah.
Which she admits to. Like that's the funny thing is they're all like, yeah, we're at a solid 5 out of 10 basically on average across the team, but they're still going to do this. Why are we going to do this? Something numbers. Basically just because Ashley's there, or some vestige of Ashley is there.
I mean, I think the book does a really good job of painting all the reasons why doing this is a super bad idea, but then it throws the numbers get better if they go idea in front of them, and as soon as it does that, it's like, okay, well, they're not going to not go. They can't turn away from that. They're heroes. They're incapable of turning away from that, despite how bad this is going to be.
So remember a recent episode when we talked about how we didn't think Breakthrough was done losing people. So what's funny is I kind of backed off on that since we said that. I was like, okay, they lost they lost Swansong. I figure putting Byron out of commission for a long time might actually count as the second semi-death that Contessa said was coming. But then Victoria gets to musing that, hey, there's no reason to assume that we're out of danger now just because teacher ran away. And so we're like, fuck, she's right. But then Tristan makes a good counterpoint, and he's like, we could die at any time. Like, that's all he says. But like, yeah, it's true. Like, they could have all died the moment they left the teacher base, right? Like, it doesn't.
Right, and I mean, like, I think Tristan's absolutely right here, and what the brilliance of what this has done here is after Contessa told what was going to happen and executed that plan, we knew for absolute certainty that at least 2, but possibly 3 of these members were either going to be killed or removed. Right, we knew this. That's over now, maybe. And now we're back to uncertainty, though, because we don't by leaving it uncertain whether she meant 2 or 3, we're back to the normal amount of uncertainty any cape has whenever they're going out to do anything. Any of these people could die at any time. Like, someone else could die, not related to what happened via Contessa stuff, right? Like Sveta could just die, completely unrelated to anything Contessa saw at this point, right? Because she doesn't like control every cause and effect chain ever. She's only looking for one thing. So like we basically position ourselves back to a place where anything could happen. We don't know. So what Contessa said should no longer be a consideration for whether we go fight or not, because we're playing with the same odds we always play with when we go fight as a cape. We could die.
Yeah. My other thought was that they could be like, hey, let's just assume that Contessa's prophecy is not over yet, and then we're all immortal from now on.
There you go. That's certainly a read.
Yeah. Don't want to test it too hard though. Yeah. So, like we said, turns out Breakthrough's involvement improves the numbers. Assuming I'm interpreting Dinah's somewhat ambiguous wording correctly. Did you feel that the way Dinah phrased it was open to interpretation? Obviously the team interprets it one way, but I can imagine going back to that later and being like, because she just says it changes the numbers. I don't think she said it makes the numbers better. I
feel like they clarified. They said, do you mean like positively? And she said yes. Okay. I feel like that happened. I didn't have any doubt here.
I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately, but I feel like the back and forth there was a little bit of a suspicious wording that I'm going to go back and check later, but we'll just put a pin in that to be removed in several weeks. I'll remember, don't worry.
Okay. Will you remember?
Of course.
She says it I just pulled it up. She says it clarifies the numbers, and Miss Melissa says, I don't know if that means it improves them, and she says it does. Just working on clear terminology and understanding of my power. Yes.
Okay.
So that seems rather unambiguous to me.
Yeah, it's almost the opposite of what I said. All right.
Well, there we go. Enough. We can toss that pin out. It's gone.
Yeah, good. All right. I'm taking the pin out. It's gone. Okay. We don't leave pins in things on this podcast. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's just fascinating that like this is just their classic motivating factor. We've seen this throughout the book, right? Is like they're in bad shape, they probably shouldn't go, but they're given a reason for why it's a good idea, and they latch onto that reason, and that's exactly what they're doing here.
Yeah, that's true. They do that, don't they?
Yeah.
like they're like, we really, really shouldn't go see Goddess or have anything to do with Goddess.
But
Terrible idea, but reason. Oh, okay, yeah, let's do it. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So, Golem briefs them all on the rules for powers use. No use of powers that you have to turn on. Only powers that are either always on or that you can turn on before you pass through the portal. So this, again, like we mentioned, this is a great way to add tension.
Yeah, so basically Tristan can't use his power at all besides his always on strength. Rain can only use his blades and only if he like pulls them out beforehand, which means I guess he can't like throw them, right? He can just hold them and swipe at things.
I think that's right.
Victoria can't use her aura or the wretch, only flight, and only because she turns it on before she gets there. She could have technically used the wretch if she had turned it on, but that probably would have been a bad idea for everyone around her. So yeah, we've limited a lot of our characters. I don't know about you though. The second we establish rules in this book, my immediate thought is, oh, they're going to break the shit out of these.
Yeah.
And they did.
Yeah, I assumed they would simply because you're going to be fighting these villains, one of whom is Damsel, who's incredibly dangerous. You're going to have to pull out some of those stops in order to counter her.
Yeah, and I kind of think the book wants you to think that way. I feel like everything we've done here, just like the idea, even Victoria is conscious of the idea of how bad this is going to be, how bad of a decision it might be to go meet these people in battle. But they're doing it anyway because they have to. The numbers, they have to.
Yeah,
like
right.
we really get like, I think Kenzie is bouncing up and down with excitement, and we just see like Victoria go like fuck, shit, like shit.
Yeah. So as they're leaving, Golem kind of slows them down and asks some Contessa questions. And Sveta says a lot of the stuff we've been thinking, like we talked about a minute ago, basically. Sveta does think that Contessa let herself be caught by Teacher, which is something that I don't remember if the text has explicitly laid out that as a theory, but the fans, including us, have definitely talked about that.
Sure, yeah.
She thinks everything. Sveta thinks like everything in the last arc was part of a plan. Even the offer of the various paths, and yeah, like we said, she thinks Contessa is particularly dangerous because her power just creates all this collateral damage, and that's her explanation for what's going on here.
Yeah. Like we said, the most charitable she's been, not entirely. Yeah, I mean, I really like a portion of this read of Contessa, right? I think the read of a lot of the stuff is just a side effect, lines up with what our understanding of Contessa was after the end of Arc 15, like a person who is genuinely trying to change and trying to be a different type of person and have a different type of belief system, but she has this power, and the net result of this power is just bad things sometimes happen that we didn't like plan for. Like that's just like shard bullshit, right? So
yeah,
I mean, I really like this read of her. I'm not quite convinced with her whole she meant to be captured. Everything that she's been doing has been part of some long plan thing. I'm not quite as sold on that part of it, but I do think the side effect stuff is definitely there.
Right. I mean, isn't it the case that even her interlude included flashbacks to them making the first of the Case-53s, or at least having some of the first like horrible disasters involving the vials, and that was always something that she regretted, and so she's known that her power had this element of horrible side effects on the path to getting the thing that you want. So yeah, I don't know, I was just kind of connecting those things there in my head.
Yeah, I mean, let's put a pin in this.
Right. So Golem confirms that Teacher was distracted by what Contessa set in motion, and that Victoria's presence in particular made him decide to shut down. And Victoria, reacting to this, thinks to herself, in the midst of that mood, the wretch hadn't moved how I'd wanted it to. I'd moved like it wanted. So
that's my head exploding. For those of you listening on audio.
Yes. I saw it happen 3 times. So like the worst part of this is that Victoria doesn't even think about this any further.
Right? Oh my God. It's like, so it's been 5 days since that event happened. We've been in her head. This is the end of the 3rd chapter. We've been in her head for 3 chapters, and scholarly, analytical, cape nerd Victoria isn't thinking about what this means at all. I mean, this is literally her shard took control of her. And it's just, oh yeah, that did happen. Like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, right. And nor does she think about the implications of it. Like, because that's immediately relevant to this situation is like, oh yeah, he was freaked out because he saw and understood somehow that what was happening was that the door was cracked open, and the implications of that are what? What are the implications of that? Seems important to understand. That's like the whole thing. That's the whole mystery. But and so we're not, just to be clear, we're not saying like Wildbow forgot.
No, yeah, obviously
we're saying that Victoria has like put a big old Amy style no-go zone around thinking about this.
Would you say she put a pin in it?
She put a pin in it, and then she left the pin there and didn't come back for it.
Yeah.
And she doesn't want to think about this, and it upsets her.
Especially moving into the next chapter where it happens again, and again, she we'll get there, but she casually mentions, well, the door's open now. It's not going to shut quite right anymore. But that's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. And when does that, like, I'm sorry, Victoria, excuse me, Victoria. Is this a thing that happens that like your connection with your passenger reverses and the passenger starts controlling you? Is this a thing you've heard about before? If so, doesn't it seem like, wouldn't that be on the spectrum of really bad outcomes, and shouldn't you be worried about it? And if not, if you've never heard about this before, isn't that even worse?
Yeah.
Like my first thought was like, oh, this is somehow what Amy did to her. This is what the touch did.
Sure.
Amy fucks with shard human connections. Amy did this, and it just hasn't manifested until now, and now it's starting to manifest. And maybe that's why Victoria doesn't want to think about it. Is she on some level knows that that's what this is? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It could just be. I mean, it could just be like a combination of the teacher fucking with the shard world and the weirdness of the connections and the ice breaking and particularly perfect aligned mood for her shard to be like, all right, taken over. This is exactly what I wanted. I don't know. Yeah, I think we're going to get more information about this later, but it is surprising that the character we would think would be most interested in getting more information about this is just not really focusing on it. Especially considering the idea of losing control of yourself, both mentally and physically, is like a pressure point for Victoria. Like, this is something she's deeply uncomfortable with. And in the next chapter, she's just like, let's do it. Let's go. Come on. Let's do it.
Right. The next chapter is even more interesting in that way because, she, like you said, she just kind of is just like, all right, fine. I'm not even going to think about like the implications of having this door swinging open and banging in the metaphorical shard wind as I'm flying around the danger zone.
Yeah, it's terrifying. I've never been more worried about and we haven't even talked about the damn chapter yet. I'm so worried about Victoria.
I know.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, the team moves through the portal near to the Death Chester attack. Victoria flies in to scout, giving us a good look at the clowns that we're going to be fighting next chapter, including Damsel, who sees her coming and shows a flicker of Swansong in her expression.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a whole lot more in the next chapter. But I want to talk about the end line of this chapter, which I think is perfect for Victoria's state of mind. She just finishes the chapter with, what a fucking mess this all was. It's just like an exasperated, she's sick, she's tired, she knows this is going to be emotionally devastating to her. She knows it's going to be emotionally devastating to Kenzie. Like, she doesn't, like, almost, I think there's part of her that's like, I don't want to be here. I want to go to bed.
Yeah.
But she's here again, and it's going to be fucking terrible.
I mean, when I'm sick, sometimes I've been known to sleep on the couch because I don't want to go up a flight of stairs.
Hell yeah.
And Victoria here is sick and going into life or death combat. So, yeah, got a lot of willpower.
Yep.
That's what I'm saying.
Hooray.
All right, moving into 16.4. Victoria continues on in her absolutely shit mood, describing the battlefield, including Death Chester and the Huntsmen, who are already attacking who are already fighting, basically. We get a sense of complicated pre-existing relationships between these groups. The huntsmen have been tangling with Trophy Wife and Backwoods over their pilfering of the parklands for some time, apparently.
Yeah, so this is an emotionally devastating chapter, right? I mean, there's a lot of really rough, like, emotional shit that happens to a lot of our characters here. But the start here, I kind of loved because, like, the opening line of the chapter is, this is a shitty battlefield. Like, this is the shittiest. She's just like, just a carryover from the other chapter. She's just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I really like that. I really like that. And I like, you're right that these other groups have history with each other. Huntsman has been fighting some of these Death Chester members for a long time. And I think Victoria describes them as nemesises, right?
Yeah.
Is it nemesis?
Nemesis, yeah.
Nemesis?
Yeah.
And I think that's probably an accurate description of what Nailbiter and Sidepiece and Hookline are to Victoria and Breakthrough, right? Maybe not. Maybe Victoria doesn't see them as her nemesis, but maybe they see Breakthrough as their nemesis because, like, they're basically the Bebop and Rocksteady of Ward, right? Like, they've been the ones that, like, they fought them several times and they kind of always beat them, but they never go away. Like, I like that a lot.
Yeah, it's perfect. I mean, Victoria thinks of it as being a cops and robbers thing, right? So, so referencing Bebop and Rocksteady, or just kind of, you know, standard comic tropes villains is a good pull. I think is appropriate.
Yeah, and they're doing. I mean, the stuff they're doing is just petty thievery, right? They're just breaking into people's cars and stealing all their shit that they packed as they go to evacuate. Like, it's so petty and terrible in a very traditional hero villain cop robber type of thing. Yeah,
right. I mean, you can almost imagine them just like rolling their eyes, like, "Come on, this is the time you're going to choose to do this." Like at least Love Lost had like a certain flair to her horrible violence and attacks.
There you go, folks. Matt Freeman. At least the person who chopped up people and left them for dead had some style.
At least you can take her seriously. Am I right, folks? So, Scott, what's the significance of Vicky not even being in costume for this fight?
I mean, I like it on a lot of things. I like it that she feels more exposed in this regard because she's very emotionally vulnerable right now. And so, like, she's not in costume. She's not in her normal gear. So she feels a little more exposed. I like it as a hint of maybe a less than heroic future that Victoria might have. As we've been talking throughout this arc, that we think she's going down a path, both with her wanting to explore the Shard realm, and now also with, which ties into that, her, you know, just wanting to hand over the driver's seat to Waste just seemingly regularly. And it could just be, you know, a good old fashioned identity crisis where, who is she right now? Who am I? Victoria wonders to herself. Am I this person? I don't know. And I think that could be a great reflection of, you know, the questions that she's asking herself. So I like any of those things. I don't know.
Yeah, I do too. I guess I was just thinking like it's vulnerability basically. She's not ready for this. She's not really up for this. She's not really up for being in a battle, but she's gonna do it anyway. And it's kind of like showing up for work in your casual clothes. It's like, oh, this doesn't feel right. This isn't right. You know.
I wish. You know, like my entire motivation for going Doof Media is getting to a point where I don't have to dress up to go to work anymore.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man.
So you folks can make that happen. Patreon.com/doofmedia.
Yeah, we should put that as a tier, you know. No longer dressing up for work tier.
Slacks? Right. Fuck slacks.
Yeah, the fuck slacks tier.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So we get just a ton of commentary on each of these capes here.
Yeah.
And we can't really go into all of it. I mean, the chapter does it just great anyway. But one that we'll focus on is Moksho, who is described as having the proportions of a gorilla, which I only bring up because it lends credence to the claim that he makes later on.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Trophy Wife and Backwoods are both some great capes, but yeah, clearly the jester-like Moksho is the star of this particular chapter. And By star, I mean like in that new version of A Star is Born when Lady Gaga wins the Grammy and Bradley Cooper follows her on stage but ends up pissing himself because he's so drunk and wasted, and it's super terrible and embarrassing, and you just feel bad for everyone in the situation, including him. It's basically just like that.
I follow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Mockument. I thought mock show felt wrong. That's your fault.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Mockument.
I did it wrong. Well, that was the only time I made that. No, I'd made it again. What is wrong with me?
This is like, who is the one girl you got? Presley? Was it Presley's name you just got totally wrong?
Preston or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, mockument.
There you go.
Mock show is another cape in the story though, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's not that bad of a mistake. Anyway.
No, you're fine.
So mockument uses his power and creates something. A caricature of a monstrous caricature. Features distorted with mouths yawning open in horror, lips lipstick red, or whole faces smushed into distorted kissy faces. I saw a tattoo of a heart with an arrow through it, the space within with the word in it. Sorry, the space within with a word in it. Amy. And then a bit later, we see what the creature is saying. Those are the happiest days of my life because she forced me to be happy, but they were still the happiest. I might go back if I could. Things were simpler then. I had everything I wanted because she made herself the only thing I wanted. So this was a slap in the fucking face.
Fuck.
While reading.
Yeah, I mean, you just read it out to me again, and it just emotionally beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Again, and I read it like 4 times.
I know. I think when I got to that part, I was like she describes the creature, and like you know immediately what it is. Like before we're even more than a couple sentences in, you're just like, oh
yeah,
no, and then it's like, and then it just gets worse from there. And she's just, I mean, frankly, she's taking it much better than she would have at the start of this story. But
let's give her like all the credit we can.
Yeah,
she deals. I mean, at the beginning, at least, when it's happening for the first time, she deals with this super well.
Yeah.
She's like very on mission. She's focusing on what she needs to do. She's trying to talk to Damsel over the terrible thing, screaming her worst moments in her life back at her and her worst fears back at her. She's doing a pretty good job. Now, later she dives into some not great stuff, but at the start, I mean, and I can't imagine a worse time for this to be happening than right now, right? She's sick. She's in a terrible mood. Her friend Kenzie is not doing well. She's interacting and fighting with the twin of her dead friend that she's in the middle of mourning. This is the worst time for this to happen. And here comes this thing that takes everything she feels about herself and manifests it literally in front of her to have it screaming back at her. It's awful. It's so awful.
Yeah. I mean, mockument's power is one that cannot be used ethically, apparently.
No. Let's please note that the column that this monstrous caricature comes out of, quote, broke like an egg, Matt.
Yep.
Those eggs.
Egg Watch 2019.
Yeah.
It's all building towards something, folks.
It's all the final boss of Ward is going to be an egg.
I mean,
or the chicken.
I mean, we're making all these metaphors about ice that's too thin, it's going to crack, or about, a window you don't want to knock on. What else cracks, everybody? Huh? Yeah, it's been there the whole time, and I was the only one who saw it. Anyway.
I feel so bad laughing about this section because it's legitimately awful, but that was great. What I love about this in particular, though, in the writing of it, is how this horror is mixed with truth, right? The first thing it says to her as it is born is, I have a runny nose and a sore throat, right? That's the first thing it says. And then it says, I'm so done with this shit. A bit later it says, you win, we lose, like we always do. These are things that we know Victoria is thinking or feeling, right? Yeah. These are accurate depictions of Victoria's health state right now, her mental state right now, and her frustrations with how things are going. So what this does is establishes a baseline for this caricature as having
accurate.
As accurate, exactly. And so when it starts going into this Amy stuff, that hurts even more. It's like it's turning that knife and slipping it in deeper, and it's worse and worse and worse, and it's because of this. And I think we've pointed this out multiple times throughout the story that Wildbow does a very, very good job of this in the story so far, like the way of establishing a certain baseline of truth and then using that to make things even worse and to emotionally just nail you with it. And that's why I think this works as well as it does.
Yeah. I mean, the things that, you know, kind of the more horribly unsettling things that the caricature slips in, those are obviously the ones that are getting under Victoria's skin, actually.
Yeah. And to the point where this is my favorite quote in the whole chapter. It was his power, right? He created copies of people that reflected what they hated most about themselves, threw in a few mistruths like the I'd go back if they fuck with the target's head enough, right? And like, this is her internal monologue.
Right. Who's she asking? Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, the asking the question in this moment is so effective. It is devastating because she's trying to convince herself that is the truth.
Yeah,
she's desperately convincing herself that I don't actually think that, right? Yeah. I don't actually believe the I'd go back. I don't actually believe these things that this thing is saying, right? Please, brain, convince me of this, please.
Yeah. And it's if it is calculated, it's calculated perfectly because it's something that she's not certain about. Right. Yeah. And my model of human psychology these days is that we contain multitudes. We have a lot of different parts that are at war with each other, many of which we violently disapprove of and suppress to a level where they never really get to say their piece in kind of the conscious workspace. And so I think it's entirely possible that she does have something in her that still would go back, you know. Maybe it's just the tiniest piece of herself, but it is there, and part of her knows it's there, you know?
Yeah. I mean, what I was talking about this on a podcast yesterday was that there's a little piece of your brain, right? There's a little bit in the back of your head that has the most uncharitable read of yourself as possible, right? Yeah. And it's always there, and you're usually pretty good at ignoring it. But when someone states those things external of your brain, when says them out loud, then that part of your brain goes, oh, fuck, I was right. Look, there's the proof. I was right. And it just goes, yep. There we go. Prophecy fulfilled. I knew it. And it just like spirals you. And dear God, like this is, it's awful. It's awful.
Yeah. Then that part goes, I was right about everything else too. And
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
It's awful.
So
I love the writing. I love it. I love it.
Oh, it's so shocking. Like the way it's written, where you have no idea what Mokumen's power is at all. You're not even set up for this to be like a big thing. It's not foreboding like nursery or something.
No,
where you're like, oh, I'm worried about this guy. It's like just bam, egg cracks open. Fucks with your head. Yeah, yeah, it's great. I love it.
Yep.
So yeah, the fandom has really turned on Side Piece after this.
Yeah, that's because, God, she's like being the worst.
She's so bad here. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, I think this is completely in line with how she's always been, right? She's always had this particular brand of villain that is going to laugh or find hilarious or be indifferent to some of the worst, most painful parts of people, right? Like this has always been who she is, but this is turned specifically towards a character that we love and the worst possible thing that the character can be going through. So it comes off here as just way worse than any of those other much funnier moments. Side Piece, basically the South Park of supervillains, right? She's an equal opportunity asshole. Actually, that's too mean to Side Piece. At least she admits that she's just being a trolley asshole. Boom! Got you, Trey Parker. Suck it. Enjoy your millions of dollars.
You really hurt his feelings.
I know. I got him.
Yeah. So despite this absolutely devastating sight that she's going through, Victoria, as we said, continues to be professional and gracious, even telling Damsel that she's won. She'll get territory out of this. There'll be deals. Just back off now, get out of the danger zone, and this will count as a win for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I just like it's like we said, it's so impressive to me that she's able to still manage this negotiation, right? Like we have to give her the most props it is possible to give a person, because the fact that she's even functional is incredible.
Yeah. Right. I mean, again, like she hasn't broken down in tears or in rage or flown away. She's just going, and she's she didn't even go into herself. She didn't have like a long Victoria zone out session. She's doing great. It's amazing. Yeah, it's real growth, I think. I mean, it really sucks she has to go through this, but it's showing her mettle here.
Yeah.
So then she flies over. She touches base with the huntsman. She gets some more commentary on these villains, what their deal is. Trophy wife's power is described. It's just another horrifying power.
Yep.
Backwoods, though, gets massive points for name cleverness.
Oh, because he's got wood on his back. I get it.
Yeah,
That's
beautiful.
clever.
It's beautiful.
Good job, Backwoods.
There's a lot of great like corny villain names in Ward. Like I want to collect all the corniest ones.
Yeah, that's great.
So I kind of want to focus on Mockument specifically for a second.
Oh, good. Let's do it.
Because it just seems to me to intuitively make sense that powers like this one would pose the biggest problem to the whole punching holes in reality thing.
Yeah.
Because we're thinking about the shards. The shards think of themselves as living or dead on the basis of connections. If they're disconnected, they're dead. Connection is extremely important to them. And here Victoria says of Mockument's power, probably uses some weak connection to the power or replicates what it can track nearby. So there is an or in that sentence, but there's also the word connection in that sentence. So if the shards are desperate for connection, that's one of the things that's driving them. That's one of the major variables that governs their existence. Then if that's the case, then powers like Moccuments and like ingenues and teachers and scapegoats and Valkyries and Eidolons basically trump powers or powers that reach out to connect with other shards are going to be the ones that are the worst, right? The reason I'm bringing this up is like at first I was like, oh, Damsel's power is probably really bad, and then I was thinking like, well, they said that making portals isn't that bad, and a portal seems like the worst possible thing you could make if you were worried about accidentally punching a hole in reality. So I'm like, well, maybe that's not actually the problem. It's not literally messing with dimensions; it's messing with shard connections.
Yeah,
I don't know.
No, I did not think of this at all. My brain did not go there, but I really like this. I mean, I like I think you're absolutely right that kind of based on what we understand on how Mockument's power works, it has to be like at least communicating on some level with Victoria's shard, because that's how it gets the powers, right?
Right.
Like it has to something to in that regard. So yeah, I mean, I think there's something there. I think you're on the right track there. I think there's something to this general idea that the shards connecting and the attempts to, I mean, that's what a broken trigger is, right? We learned that a broken trigger is like a desperate attempt to connect, and it's just like error and shit happens. So right. I think it would be fitting to the story that whatever causes this ice to finally crack fully and shatter is the connections between shards.
Yeah, and also just one more piece of evidence makes sense. That's why Valkyrie is staying away from the city. Is hers is one of the big, the worst culprits in terms of shards connecting to each other.
Yeah. Plus, I like the thing that might devastate the entire city is just these fucking Bebop and Rocksteady morons just stealing purses and shit. Like,
right.
Fucking idiots.
Right. Or this girl who has this door that's swinging open in her mind and completely ignoring.
Yeah. That too.
Yeah,
that
right.
too. Vicky.
Yeah. So Victoria, sick of this shit, flies high up into the air, hopefully far enough that she's not exacerbating the thin ice situation. And then she activates her force field and her aura, and she falls. And as she falls, she holds onto the serenity and the flow. She plummets back down to the ground, and she just fucking destroys her Mockument character with a handful of wretch-launched coins. And then she physically tears apart Side Piece's caricature. And then she proceeds to try to crush Mockument with a car and nails Trophy Wife with a car side mirror, hitting her hard enough to probably kill a normal person. And this is all in the span of like a couple seconds, I imagine. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this is... Look, I know their continued power usage threatens the fabric of reality, but the crime that they're doing is thievery. They're being petty thieves. Right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, true.
I mean, so let's just keep that in mind. Do you think flying up like a half mile into the air is like nullifies the risk of using turn on powers? Because I was kind of like, really, Victoria?
at first I was like, no, this is a poor decision. And then when I reread it, I was thinking about the bit where she's talking about like feeling the fluctuations diminish as she gets higher, and I was like, okay, maybe this is meant to convey that as she gets higher, she's not feeling the signs of the disturbance, but I definitely didn't read it that way the first time, though.
Yeah, I get that, and I think that adds to some of the most beautiful writing in the whole chapter, right?
Yeah.
Where she says, "I could feel the distinction. The ice cube slide of flight became smoother still. It was a slide over skin, not scar tissue. No bumps, no tiny bits of turbulence that weren't actually wind. If I controlled fire and paid the most acute attention, would I see the difference in how the flames touched and tongued the air? If I mutated from head to toe, would it shape my form, the whirls of metaphorical fingerprints and the spacing of pores?" First of all, that's just beautiful writing.
Yeah.
Second of all, I just love what that says about Victoria, that when like she's coming up with examples of how it would feel differently to use power in non-danger zone area, and one of the first things she comes up with is mutating from head to toe into a different shape, a different form, which I kind of get why that's in her head right now.
And the language of scar tissue.
Yeah, exactly. Which we know she literally has like all over her hands right now, right? But also like she is scar tissue.
Yeah, true. Oh my God. I like that the next line is "Go, I communicated," and the line "communicated" is what stuck out to me, because it's not commanded. I almost expected it to be commanded, but actually, I think this is maybe the reason why waste isn't triggering her phobia of being controlled, is that she actually sees this as a joining rather than a surrendering. You know, there's definitely an element of surrender to it, but
she says surrender was the name of the game here.
Yes, but it's a willful surrender.
Sure.
It's not she's like, I imagine if she tried to take control back and it didn't work, then she would completely freak out and not do this anymore. But I think it's viewed as like a meeting of the minds rather than something. She's not. I don't know.
I mean, I agree. She says it's we. I mean, she doesn't she doesn't actually throughout the course of this battle completely lose control of herself. That's why at the beginning of the show I described it like a driver's ed car, where it's just two people are in the driver's seat now. They're both steering.
True.
They both have brake pedals.
Let's get further into the fight though, because I think there's a lot of stuff to talk about there.
Yeah, but so like she fucking just misborns her way into killing this thing. She just flicks coins at it until it dies. So she's got a rail gun now.
Yeah. I mean, that was a cool image of just like a shotgun blast of coins, just like shredding this thing and killing it instantly.
Yeah.
And now that's basically something she can do anytime, right? Like, assuming this works the way we're thinking it does.
Yep. I don't see any reason why she couldn't. Yep.
She's a blaster now.
Yep. Doesn't have to get in close anymore.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then of course the line, "Trophy wife was tough, and we'd hit her right where her trophy rack was attached to her back." So that's the first time that she says "we," referring to the entity of herself and her shard, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, the really wonderful thing about this whole thing is that the force field and the wretch in this section become two distinct entities from each other. And in the past, when Victoria was talking about bringing up her force field, she would say, "I activated the wretch." That's how she would describe it. Those two things were linked to each other. The force field and the wretch were, in her mind, kind of the same thing. But here they're different. She talks about her force field. Even in the part we just read, "I activated my force field and aura, and then I let myself fall." But she doesn't just say force field. She still talks about the wretch here. So she's just treating them as different things. The force field is a power. The wretch now is waste, is this entity, is the shard that has just taken up residence in her in a way that it has gone through the door in a way that it has only that one other time before.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I don't know if the nomenclature is entirely clear, but I do like the idea that she kills the caricature, or rather, Waste kills the caricature.
Yeah.
And Victoria thinks, fuck the wretch.
Yeah.
And it's like, in that moment, it's like her and Waste have teamed up to express their just contempt and loathing of the wretch.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously she doesn't know the name Waste. That's basically a fanon name, although the Shard sort of does think of itself that way. But I like this idea that she's come to a kind of peace with her mutated force field, and it's a pretty cool development, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, but it's terrifying because, like we said earlier, she just seems weirdly indifferent to the implications of it. Like, she gives this line, "I was pissed, hurt, sad, sick, and a little door had opened back in teachers' headquarters. Once opened, it didn't close quite the right way again." This is a huge fucking deal. This is a huge deal. Victoria, what the fuck?
Yeah. I agree. And she's, I don't know. I'm so much more alarmed that she's not making a big deal out of it than I am alarmed at the fact that it's happening in the first place, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a little column A, a little column B.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So speaking of Mockument, as she's crushing him, she says, "I hate your power." "I hate it too," he replied. He smiled wide, but his eyes were cheerless. "The person who had it died, and I'm the mess they left behind." Oh my God, this fucking horrifying chapter.
So, I mean, it's horrifying in that now immediately there's this guy who you just fucking hated, and then 5 minutes later, like, you just pity him in the worst possible way. But I mean, so, like, let's just state what the implications of this are, right? That he used his power to create a copy of himself, and then he died, and this is what's left now, right? That seems to be what it's indicating.
Yeah, I think that's the most obvious interpretation. Yeah. I think that makes the most sense, because then the copy would still have the power, basically.
Right. But maybe the copy has a less, a not as good version of the power, which explains why the copies he creates have an even shittier version of their own powers, right?
Yeah,
I think that makes a lot of sense.
That's kind of the first pass makes the most sense explanation, I think. Yeah.
It's like, it's the old multiplicity, a copy of a copy. It's never quite as crisp.
Yeah, one of these days we'll have one episode where we don't reference multiplicity.
That's possible. But yeah, I mean, the other implication of this is kind of like these, like, they're fully functioning, sentient, living creatures that he's creating every time, right?
Yeah, it's so horrible.
It's horrible.
It's worse even than Nilbog creatures, because at least Nilbog creatures are like their own thing. These are just like twisted mockeries of people who already exist, whose only purpose is to suffer.
And I'm not saying that, like, oh, then Victoria is actually killing people. Like, I think in the case of Victoria's copy, like, she did a favor to that thing, right? Because that's like that existence.
I mean, like, another thing is, like, what normally happens to these things? Like, does he cancel the power and then they go away? Yeah, that's
a good question.
or is he just like, well, I guess that's there now, I'm gonna leave.
Dear God, yeah. I mean, and what, like, we don't know the limits of this power, because we know he creates 2. We don't see any more. So how many can he create at one time?
True. Yeah.
God, it's horrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is just like one of the many villains that are thrown into this chapter. I love it.
Right. Again, robbing purses and briefcases.
Right. Lingerie and bass guitars.
Yeah.
So Kinsey rushes into the fight and easily knocks over Torso, and then confronts Damsel. For a moment, Damsel experiences conflict, but then she doubles down on the Damsel persona. They are ultimately able to persuade her to leave, though. Or maybe the villains decide to leave on their own. You know, it's not entirely clear. I guess that kind of ambiguity works in Damsel's favor, though.
Sure.
But anyway, Victoria describes the whole exchange as being years of cops and robbers distilled into moments.
Yeah. So let's talk about Damsel and the current state of Damsel right now. So basically, the idea here is that Ashley, in some form, exists inside Damsel in some way, right? And I think this kind of ties back to the commonality in the dreams they've been having, right? That they're via their shard, I guess. Is it one shard that's connected? Who knows? But via the shard, they are connected in some way, and they are experiencing the same things. And there is a version of her that exists inside of Damsel.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Yeah. Or I mean, I see it as there's just been enough flushing of Damsel with Swansong's memories that she wakes up every morning and feels a little bit more like Swansong than she did the day before, I guess. Yeah. I mean,
at what point do memories, like, do you have so many memories of a person that you start being kind of that person? Right.
And they're not just memories of like vision and sound and so forth. They're the dream memories appear to be basically like reliving that thing.
Yeah.
So it's like she experienced. I mean, the moment I think of the most is her little monologue as she's dying and thinking and saying, I died screaming and ranting every time other than this.
Yeah.
You can bet that's something that Damsel got, and that's going to be fucking with her head as like this crowning achievement, basically, of like, look, I lived my life the way I wanted, and yeah, I still died, but at least I died in a way that I can own and be proud of. She
And then you have Damsel who like is like actively pushing against that, pushing it. Like the idea, those feelings, the idea, the way that is being is going through her body right now. She is resisting it. We see it happen, and that's like, oh man, that's rough. I mean, do you think that like it's this weird kind of conversation about autonomy there, right? Like at one point, is she not Damsel anymore?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of the Harbingers, where 4 was basically like so upset. I mean, he didn't seem emotionally upset, but on a level, he's upset at the idea that one of them is going to go out of sync with the others, and it's going to basically be contaminating their little pool of Harbingerness. Mm-hmm. And like, you can kind of imagine that would be disturbing for a Harbinger if they started getting these feelings of remorse that weren't theirs. They'd be like, man, I want to get rid of this.
Right. Like if you were forced into an existence in which you and every copy of you meshes and intermingles your personality, then the closer your personalities are together, the more comfortable you feel. Mm-hmm. And the more apart those personalities are, the less like you, quote unquote, you feel. So the fact that like Ashley Swansong has changed a whole bunch from the way she used to be is gotta be like super, super fucked up for Damsel, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
But it also has this weird kind of like tragic, terrible implication for Kenzie and Victoria, right? Like I love that moment. Like it makes me sad because if she's in there, it means she can't be out here.
Yeah.
And that's so sad. But like those two would love to push the Swansong side of Damsel to the forefront and push the Damsel side to the background. They'd love if that happened, right? Because they'd get their friend back. Yeah. So like there's a lot of implications for what this could mean.
I feel like both of them understand that that's not really practical. But I think they both also inevitably are drawn to Damsel and kind of hope that at least they'll get to see some figment of their friend.
Yeah, I mean, like Kenzie tried to make the not AI version of Ashley, right? And she couldn't do it because it wasn't close enough, and that made it worse. Well, here's a Damsel that has that Ashley in them. Don't you just want to hang out with her because you'll get to see that version of Ashley every so often?
Right. Yeah. Even if it's just a glimmer between being a crazy, ranting, abusive jerk.
Right. Yeah. Ugh, it's so rough. So, I mean, what is this like? We talked about the shard afterlife so much in this book, and March's understanding of what it was didn't prove to be accurate. But is this kind of what that is? In that, like, a version of herself lives on, kind of, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we know essentially for a fact at this point that the shards basically archive the people that they're attached to, and what they do with that archive at this point is probably nothing. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if they. I guess we don't really know.
I mean, that's what the dreams are. The dreams are Damsel is accessing the archive, every night while she's
Yeah.
asleep.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty horrifying because now I'm remembering what happened to Snag. And as he's dying, he's realizing that it was basically just going to be an endless sleep, like an endless series of dreams that he would never wake up from.
Cool. So
Oh,
he's
God.
just going through his archive.
I think so.
And maybe all of them. Jesus, that's fucking the worst.
That's just awful.
Shards, man. Gotta love them.
Oh my God, this universe is so horrifying. This is joining. This is like the most horrifying universe, basically.
It really is. Like just living in here, it's nightmarish. Oh my God.
Yeah. Stuff like Dinah is like in 14% of these we don't even get to die. Is like that's totally what's gonna happen. This is
Oh my
this horrible
God.
shit.
I hate it, but also I love it.
I do. So anyway, moving on to more cheerful matters.
Sure.
We see that one of the huntsman's members, a flyer with a glass spear, is none other than Etna.
Hey.
And she actually gets a compliment from Victoria.
She does, and she gets a we're good, don't worry.
Yeah, it's cool that she has a glass spear. Part of that could be that she doesn't want to use her power in the danger zone. Part of it could be that she's like willingly, as a hero, decided she's not going to use the extremely deadly and dangerous liquid molten glass throwing power.
Yeah, I'm going to admit that I forgot about the rules thing, and I immediately went to she's altered her power to make it like a less destructive and violent version of it because I forgot about the rules.
But I think there's some credence to that because like she has the wherewithal to have a spear, right? It's like that. I'm just imagining she probably did that ahead of time.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, we know she did because any power use has to be done ahead of time. Hey, one thing we didn't talk about is how Tristan uses his power.
True, and I think Rain does too, and I'm not sure that he uses it according to the rules. So yeah, but we knew that was going to happen because you're fighting these villains who are not holding back at all, and yeah, like it seems like Tristan just used it like the barest possible amount that he could get away with just to disable someone, but yeah.
But I think it just shows like how thin that ice they're skating on is, even when every time they go out and try to engage these things, even if they're trying their best, you get pushed into a situation where it's like die or just use my power just a little bit, just real quick.
Right. Yep. So the chapter ends with the team trying to think about how to arrange another meeting with Damsel. Yeah.
So we get the most ominous chapter end in a while here, right? Where Victoria, frustrated, says, okay, we're going to talk to her. And then we'll deal with the dream stuff because this situation is untenable. If we're going to have to take the high road again, I don't want it to be because we're accepting more losses. We might as well take the highest road and decide things. And so that to me is the exact power that a Defiant warned them against going for. She's like, no, we're going to do this. We have to do this. I'm tired of this. And I'm like, oh my God, Victoria, you're really scaring me. The whole back of your head implication that the person that causes this horrible event could very well be our protagonist just keeps buzzing around in my head, Matt.
Yep. I mean, that was kind of where that's honestly today I was like, yeah, I mean, we're lining up a lot of variables that make it seem like the disaster is going to be centered around a protagonist. But how exactly that's going to happen is not clear, and I think that's going to be the fun of this arc. Assuming we're right, of course. It's going to be twists and turns, and it's going to be complicated.
Yeah, the trick to being right about this, Matt, is to express utmost confidence that you are, and then if you aren't, just never mention it again and hope everyone forgets.
Works pretty well.
Yep.
So let's talk for a second about what From Within means in context of everything so far in the arc.
Sure.
So I got a few things. Waste is expressing her will from within Victoria. Mockument manifests particularly shitty realities and distortions that exist within people into reality. We see glimmers of Swansong manifesting from within Damsel.
Yeah.
I suppose I'll add to that the whole aspect of Byron and Tristan being a continual, from within. I think we talked about that last week, though. That's why I didn't want to harp on it. But yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of from within happening in this arc.
Yeah, and hey, not many of them are like super positive.
Yeah.
Remember when we started the arc and I was all like, I'm going to interpret this positively. It's
Yeah.
the light, the power from within, the goodness. It's going to, well, here's all the,
Yeah.
this is all not great.
There's a lot of ways for bad things to come from within. Huh.
Yeah. Who could have seen that coming? Except for everybody.
Yeah. Any reader of this story.
Are you trying to tell me the good things don't happen as much as the bad things happen?
It's all about seeing the glass as half full.
The glass spear is half full.
It's half full of
molten
glass or sludge from some other dimension or something. I don't know. Something horrible. All right. Discussion question from last week was, how do you relate to Victoria?
I loved these answers, Matt. I thought this was really great.
Yeah. The reason I asked this is the tendency of Victoria to push herself too hard was the thing that I related to. How she has her cold, and she's sort of faking at taking care of herself, but she's also like taking care of everyone else. That's kind of how I always end up doing things. So that was my answer. That's why I asked. I just wanted to get that out of the way up front.
Cool.
So Kayakin says that they related to Victoria's Cape Geek side, always wanting to know, even just collecting information for its own sake. And in this aspect of her character is indeed front and center from chapter 1.
I think out of all the answers we got, this was the most shocking to me. I really didn't expect Kayakin to go with the Cape Geek side of things.
Yeah, real surprise.
Yeah. Roundest Frog says they relate to Victoria because they have a cold right now and it fucking sucks. It's fair. It's fair.
Yeah, that's one of the most highly upvoted answers too. Waffle Shot says they can relate to the point in Victoria's life where she was a disgusting flesh monster. Hey, I think we all feel that way.
Yeah, that's me every day. Disgusting flesh monster.
Yep.
Aren't we all just a
We are.
Disgusting flesh monster?
Yeah.
We are pretty gross. Like humans are pretty gross.
Yeah, I mean, when you like every animal, when you really think about it, is a disgusting flesh monster.
Yeah, but I mean, I get this. I get the feeling, the feeling of disgust with your own body. I think that's a very understandable feeling.
Yeah.
Ellerdy admires Victoria's strength of belief that no one person should be making the hard choices. She takes leadership but encourages others to question her and has an elaborate mental algorithm meant to check her own biases. I agree. And if I had to answer this question, I think I would say something similar to Ellerdy here. I really admire that aspect of her character.
Yeah, at least she did all that stuff until recently. Am I right?
Oh, no.
Yeah. Hero Vorpal relates to Victoria in that they are overwhelmingly lawful, to use the D&D term. They find it difficult to break even small and inconsequential rules. And to quote them, her mantra, the time she ceded control to the patrol block leader who was a former desk jockey, her sometimes irrational frustration about why why can't people just behave, all are things that resonate deeply with how I process the world and live my life. It's also fascinating watching how she copes when she does break rules, the rationalizing, the arguing that what she was doing really was right, because these are all things that I've done as well.
Yeah, I agree with this answer too. I see a lot of myself in Victoria in this as well. I just chastised my wife yesterday for getting a warning in a school zone where she's like, I didn't deserve this. And I said, well, were you speeding? And she said, yeah, but just a little.
That's not the point.
Exactly.
You're such a deontologist, Scott.
Apparently. Mr. Cogs relates to Vicky's tendency to play peacemaker and try to de-escalate situations. Victoria is also less of an every woman than Taylor, much more distinct and less of a YA audience surrogate in terms of character background. Victoria has a lot of very specific baggage and history. While this makes her harder to just inhabit automatically, it ultimately makes her a richer character.
Yeah, I like this answer a lot. It actually made me contrast Taylor and Victoria in a way that I hadn't before, and realize how much Victoria's grown on me and how much I love her as a character and how complex she is. And I hadn't really done that exercise in a while of kind of sitting back from it and thinking about her character.
Mm-hmm. I think she's a better character than Taylor, and maybe I'm going to get yelled at now, but I love Taylor. I love Taylor. She's a wonderful character. I think Victoria's a better character.
Yeah. I mean, I think the Wild Bow has grown so much as a writer that that can't help but be the case.
Yeah.
I mean, I still love Taylor, obviously.
Yeah, obviously.
Sarah Penguin lists a number of attributes that help them relate to Victoria. They relate to Victoria's scholarliness, ignoring self-care to help others, body image issues and dissociation, and love of Ashley.
Of course, gotta have that love of Ashley.
Yep.
Nexec. How do you say that?
Nexec, maybe?
Nexec? Sure.
That's how I'm gonna say
Nexec
it.
relates to Victoria's confidence in her abilities, which sits side by side with her uncertainty in other realms. Yeah, that's a good answer too. I think that's a very relatable aspect of her, right? Like when you know you're comfortable in the things you know you're good at, but like everything else, you're like, I have a lot of anxiety about this.
Right. Yeah, it's very human. It's very human to like she's believable as a badass hyper competent superhero, and also believable as someone who really doesn't have her shit together in some other realms, even though she's trying.
Yep.
Death of the artist primarily relates to Victoria's inability to care for herself mentally. They will always put their own needs second to others.
Death of the artist. I'm sorry. That's rough. Yeah. Understandable. Yeah. Just self-care, buddy.
Yep.
Treat yourself. That doesn't really work in that case.
Dude, anyway.
Ex das Niveau. Ex das Niveau X says they relate to Victoria's family issues, though Carol is a much better mom. Oof. I'm sorry.
Yikes.
I'm sorry.
Yes. That sucks. Yeah.
I have a very good relationship with my family, but even I like have moments where I'm just like, God, my family, stop being a Carol, mom. I get that. I'm sorry you have a rough relationship with your family. No one should have to go through that, but many of us do.
Yeah, family difficulties can be uniquely horrible. I wish everyone the best of luck with that. There were a few answers this week that actually mentioned family issues.
Yeah.
Genevista relates to Victoria's strong moral code, trouble thinking about their body, bad relationship with their mom, and a similar way of dealing with trauma. They add, it's opened up my eyes to pain and coping mechanisms that I wasn't aware of and made it easier for me to confront some of my trauma. I think that's true of me too, honestly. Like, watching a character dodge and sort of deal with intrusive thoughts for a lot, it really highlights when you're doing that yourself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the same was true with Taylor as well, kind of for me, that like Taylor's great ability to compartmentalize, like thinking about it so much has allowed me to like recognize that in myself as well. Because I definitely do that. So yeah.
I mean, just like when I started this book, I was basically in the position of being like, I don't have any trauma. I've had a charmed life. I don't really have any trauma. And it's like just because you haven't been turned into a flesh monster doesn't mean you haven't had any trauma.
Right.
And it doesn't actually do you any harm to admit that you probably have, and that you could do yourself some good by actually working on that.
And I think it is very much something that people with trauma do, is they compare their trauma to other people's trauma, and they say, well, this isn't as bad as what someone else had to go through, so I shouldn't complain about this, or I should dismiss it, or...
Yeah. Sorry. That involuntary sound was me remembering being a teenager and my friends like telling me about their problems and me being like, yeah, but your problems aren't actually that bad compared to like these other people over here.
Yeah, don't do
honestly,
that.
sometimes I think people need to hear that or it helps to hear that, but sometimes not.
Yeah, sometimes not. I mean, like that's the thing, is like problems are problems, and if it's stuff you're going through, like it might help sometimes to recognize that if you have it better off than some people, but that also should not cause you to ignore or dismiss the shit that you've gone through.
I'd phrase it as, if contrasting your problems with other people's problems instantly cheers you up and you never think about that again, great. If not, then you probably need to actually deal with it.
Yeah. And we are not psychologists, so
that's true.
Don't listen.
That's true. I've read a couple of web serials though.
That is true. Nihil Supernum says the main way they connect with her is self-awareness and introspection. Her constant internal questioning of, why am I feeling this way? How is it affecting people? What can I do about it? She's also more morally conscious than Taylor, or at least moral in a different way. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, me too. Because I mean, it's true that Taylor was actually quite concerned with right and wrong. It's just like her algorithm for disambiguating between right and wrong was constantly changing based on what her situation was. So
Yeah.
whereas Victoria's trying to be grounded constantly.
Yeah.
Heaven's Chocolate relates to Victoria's struggle to let go of the past and try to move on, and her constant hammering of herself with mistakes of the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very realistic thing that Victoria does.
Yeah. I'm like, this is I'm like, yeah, I do that too, and I do that too, and I do that too, and I do.
Yeah.
Stop it, Scott.
Wildbow's got our number.
Yeah. Anti-Chris relates to being hurt by a terrible mom so consumed by her own issues that she can't effectively parent. Yeah. Man.
Yeah. Again,
family.
sorry about that,
Family.
Anti-Chris.
That's all I can
Sucks.
say is family. It's, yeah. I think there's a reason why this particular part of Victoria's character is so relatable, because we're all screwed up people, and then sometimes screwed up people make more people, but don't get less screwed up. And then that just screws up the other people.
Yeah, I think even if you have a good relationship with your parents, you can probably find moments where they're just a little bit on the Carol side, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Can confirm.
Data Snake 69 relates to Victoria in that they both hate Amy a lot, like a lot.
Yeah, totally understandable.
Yeah.
I just love that, like, how much my opinion of this character has changed throughout this book. And I will willfully admit that some of that was a result of me just not really ever sufficiently connecting the dots between what she did in Worm. We talked about that already, but
I'm on the same page as you, though. Yeah.
Scanderson connects to Victoria through her recovery. They relate to her initial struggles and bad headspace, and the journey of small victories and gradual development of mental fortitude. Yeah, that's how it's done.
Yeah, it's just such a realistically written progression from trauma through recovery that doesn't permit any magical instant solutions to the problems. You know?
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah.
And then finally, Wanson says that at first it was easy to relate to Victoria because she was adrift, not knowing what the future held, struggling to establish a routine. Being thrown out of the patrol block was also an uncomfortable and a relatable experience. But as the story has gone on and she's found her place, it's harder to relate to her, except in how she cares for her team.
Well, that just gives you like a goal to shoot for Wanson.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I feel like it's fair. Like, she has gone through this journey, and depending on where you are on your personal journey, different parts of the story may resonate more. And and I don't want to dismiss the struggles that the character has gone through, but it's a book, right? Like, you read the book and the character gets better because it's a book. It's certainly a lot easier than in real life you going through your own personal struggles and trying to become the most idealized version of yourself, right? Yeah. Right. I mean,
it's really easy to turn a page. It's really hard to get over trauma.
Yeah. There's no climax to your life. Like, this is something, it took me an embarrassingly long amount of my life to realize that, like, I wasn't going to get to the part of my life that was like the climax of a book.
Yeah.
Where everything is solved and it's awesome. And then from there, you're just like, yay. And then happily ever after. How
old were you when you were like, okay, I have to stop considering life as a thing that's going to start any day now and recognize that this is it. It's started. It's here. Because I was embarrassingly old. I was like mid-20s when I was like...
Yeah, I was gonna say mid to late 20s. Just based on, I mean, and you'd probably say the same thing just watching my life trajectory. I didn't really seize control of my destiny until I was about that age.
Yeah, well, and I had this weird thing where I was a senior dating a freshman in college. So I graduated and then moved to Dallas and then had to wait 3, it ended up being 4 because she stayed and got a grad degree, but 4 years for her to graduate and come move up here. So, like, literally for me, 22 to 26 was my entire life basically on pause because I was just waiting, and I shouldn't have done that. Not that I shouldn't have, yes, that relationship didn't work out. Not that I shouldn't have done that, but I shouldn't have treated my life like it was on pause waiting for this one thing to happen. So that's why I think I felt that way. But
yeah, I feel like the basically failure of my ability to get the job that I expected out of undergraduate and then sort of like flailingly getting into graduate school, and then having that, like, making that work for myself was my kind of protagonist journey of realizing like, oh, like I actually have to like be steering here. I can't just continue to like fall into the next thing that is waiting for me.
Yeah.
Which is really like you go from middle school to high school to college, and then after college you're suddenly adrift, and you either take charge or the world does with you what it will.
Yep. Yay. Growing up.
Yay.
This week on We've Got Adults.
And we've got personal stories about our lives. I mean, I think it's interesting that both of us basically referenced the time that could be construed as like a personal failure that galvanized us to respond by being like, okay, I can't just keep letting things happen to me.
Right. Right.
So yeah, cool. All right. Well, that was fun. That's all we got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us.
Discussion question.
Oh yeah, the blah 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 blah. The new discussion question is: are Damsel and Swansong the same person? Why or why not?
Guys, this is such a Matt question. This is the most Matt question that ever Matt questioned. Define personality and existence and consciousness. Go, just do that. It's an easy question.
I mean, really, it's about the why or why not, right? It's you have to justify it. It's not there is no right answer. Just it's about your reasoning. Yeah. All right. Looking forward to the answers to that one. And that's all we got for you this week on We've Got Ward. You guys are all part of this show, so feel free to provide us with advice, questions, or thoughts on this week's reading.
You can reach out to us via our email. We love getting email at gotwormpod@gmail.com. That came off a little sarcastic. I did not mean it that way. We actually do really like getting email. Please continue to email us. Or you can reach us on Twitter at gotwormpod. My personal Twitter is at scottdaily85, and Matt's is at Mordina Consciousness Thoughts.
Yep, and I just love getting tweets from people.
That was sarcasm.
If you're not already subscribed to We've Got Ward, we strongly recommend you do so and never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else in the world you can listen to podcasts.
And as always, you can find this and all the other shows we do over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you will find, I don't know, what show we want to do this week, Matt? Which is one we haven't talked about in a while.
I mean, we got so many shows now. I was gonna
8 shows.
I was gonna mention, if you're not paying attention to Do the Right Thing, the words this week are stray, historical, dolls, rightful. If you don't know what that means, I guess there's only one thing for you to do now. Go on over to Do the Right Thing, check it out, get the context, write a story, etc.
Fuck. That was great, Matt. Well done. Thanks. You really just teased him.
Yeah.
Just tease the shit out of them.
That's how you do it. Let's Deep Impact. What is that? No one knows. Go check it out.
It's a movie about an asteroid.
That's right.
Actually, I think it's a comet. What is that not?
I think that's like the first time anyone's ever explicitly mentioned that in any of the shows.
Go check out doofmedia.com and see all our shows. We love them. They're great. We're so happy to have these people as part of our network. And we love you guys to be our listeners.
We sure do.
That wasn't proper English.
That's fine. I don't know where we are in the script anymore. Anyway, if you want to support any of our shows, consider donating to our Patreon account at patreon.com/doofmedia. You can donate $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. Supporting us on Patreon gives you tons of great bonuses like voting in the fan art and costume contests, hangout sessions with us and the rest of the Doof crew. We have started doing this officially, actually. We played, what are those games called? Jackbox games with the Deep Impact and wanted to do the right things, to do the right thing, fellas, last week, and it was great.
Can we please continue to... We hung out with one of the Do the Right Things.
One of the Do the Right Things. One of them is a Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing 1 and Do the Right Thing 2. Mm-hmm. And, of course, access to our live stream recording sessions like this very one, and the excellent lively Discord chat where everyone spends all their time.
That Do the Right Thinger's name was Matthias, by the way.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, we did that Jackbox session was a lot of fun. We're working on like cutting together a clip of it to kind of show people, like a supercut to kind of show people what it is, because I think one of the things is we started this new, and we're calling it like Doof and Chill, and it's this really kind of nebulous hangout session where we're just gonna hang out for a couple hours and do things, and people are like, what does that mean? And I'm like, I don't know.
We'll figure it out.
So yeah, we're gonna cut together. I forget who's working on that. One of our excellent Australians is working on that. We respect people as individuals, but you'll see that on the YouTube channel in the future, and so you get an idea of what that is. But yeah, thanks to all our patrons.
And while you're over there on Patreon, make sure you go to patreon.com/wildbow and donate to him as well. This is his world. We're just playing in it. And this week, we have some special thanks for our new patrons: Bidoofs at the $1 level, Jason B. and Isaac W., Doof Dancers at the $5 level, Jeremy B., Ming S., and Literally Bismarck. Doof Troop at the $10 level, Kirsten D., Doof Warrior at the $20 level, Daniel M., and a new Supreme Leader Doof at the $45 level, Isha Moradin, upgraded to this role. Thanks so much, everyone. We really appreciate it. And we look forward to all of the stuff that you're going to make us watch and read and stuff.
Yeah, it sounds like Isha Moradin wanted us to watch some anime.
I think so.
I just want to say real quick, like this, we changed around how our Patreon worked this month, and the response you guys have shown us is like wonderful. We really appreciate it. It was something I was really worried about. I didn't want to make it seem like we were taking things away from people. I wanted to feel like people are getting value out of it, and their dollars are being well spent. And I was really, really nervous about it. And your guys' response has been incredible. So thank you so much. We really, really do appreciate it. We are so close to getting to our next goal, and therefore, having to start our next show about Dark Tower. So close that I've actually started doing behind the scenes work to prepare for that, because it seems like it's going to be inevitable at this point. And that's really exciting, because when we set that goal, Matt, I think we just threw like an impossible, unachievable number up there.
We did.
And we're 16 patrons away from hitting it, 15 patrons. And it's just like, guys, wow, you're amazing. I love you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and of course, if you can't donate right now, that's absolutely okay too. Like we love all our listeners, and there are tons of ways to help us out. If you want to, you can, reach out to people, share the show with them, share Word and Worm with them. You'd probably do that anyway, but but also share our podcast with them. Or you can email a bunch of other podcasts about us, because that's what we've started doing. It's just we're networking with other podcasters. So.
Yeah, we're gonna need you to start name dropping us on other podcasts. Reddits.
Be relentless. Like get banned from that.
Seriously. That's what you can do for me. Is you can get banned from as many subreddits as possible.
Yeah.
All right. That's all. That's all we got for you this week. Next week, From Within continues.
I'm excited and scared at the same time.
Yeah, I'm pretty scared. I'm pretty alarmed.